The gray hours embrace. The hum of the servers was a constant low thrum, a monotonous heartbeat in the otherwise desolate expanse of the 14th floor. For Mark Carter, 32, a senior data analyst at Omnicorp, a gleaming monolith of steel and glass in the heart of the city, the night shift had become his sanctuary. After his wife Sarah had left, taking with her the last vestiges of warmth from their apartment, the empty hours at home felt like a slow suffocation. Here, under the cool fluorescent glow, surrounded by the silent, watchful eyes of dormant computer screens, Mark found a grim comfort in the predictable rhythm of his tasks. He chased data anomalies, compiled reports, and occasionally stared out at the city lights, wondering about the million lives unfolding beneath him. He was a man of logic, of algorithms. His world was numbers, patterns, and verifiable facts. The idea of anything beyond the quantifiable was, to him, a relic of superstitious minds. He prided himself on his rationality, his ability to dissect any problem into its smallest, solvable components. This was why, when the first oddities began, he dismissed them. Easily, logically. The 14th floor, being the data center and a few specialized labs, was often empty save for him and perhaps a security guard making rounds downstairs. But sometimes, as he walked the long, silent corridors, he'd hear a faint, almost imperceptible whisper, like the rustle of papers or the soft sigh of a breeze, even though the building's climate control kept the air perfectly still. He'd pause, straining his ears, but it would vanish, leaving only the relentless hum of the servers. He chalked it up to fatigue, the trickery of silence after hours of staring at screens. Then came the cold spots, patches of air that would suddenly drop several degrees, raising goosebumps on his arms, only to dissipate moments later. He'd check the vents, convinced it was a draft from an unsealed window or a malfunction in the elaborate HVAC system. But the readings on the smart thermostat remained constant, always a perfectly calibrated 22 degrees Celsius. He filed a maintenance request, but the engineers found nothing. The first truly unsettling incident involved the elevator. He was on his way to grab a late-night coffee from the ground floor cafeteria, the only soul on the deserted 14th. He pressed the down button. The doors opened immediately, revealing an empty car. As he stepped in, he noticed the button for the 7th floor was lit, glowing with a soft, pulsing light. He hadn't pressed it. He looked into the empty car, a faint prickle of unease. He pressed his desired floor again, watching the 7th floor light remain stubbornly on. He sighed, annoyed, and pressed the door close button. The doors hissed shut, and the elevator began its descent. But it stopped, abruptly, at the 7th floor. The door slid open to reveal a dark, silent corridor, identical to his, but bathed in an oppressive stillness. He heard it then, a faint, mournful sob, distant but clear, echoing from the darkness of the 7th floor. He immediately pressed the door close button, a sudden, inexplicable chill washing over him. The doors obeyed, slowly closing, and he felt an immense relief as the elevator continued its descent. He told himself it was a wiring fault, a prank by the cleaning crew, nothing more. The incidents escalated with an insidious grace. A pen moved from its holder to the edge of his keyboard, his meticulously stacked reports slightly askew. He started taking pictures of his desk before leaving each night, a meticulous habit born of his data-driven mind. He wanted proof, empirical evidence, against the creeping doubt. The photos, when reviewed, showed no change. His pen was exactly where he'd left it, his reports perfectly aligned. Yet, when he arrived the next night, they would be different. It was as if his very documentation was being mocked, his attempts at logic undermined. The whispers grew louder, more distinct. They were no longer amorphous rustles. They were voices, sometimes faint, sometimes chillingly clear, calling out fragmented phrases. Find us, don't forget, trapped. He heard a child's plaintive cry, a woman's desperate plea, a man's strangled gasp. He'd spin around, flashlight in hand, sweeping the beam across the vast, empty office floor. But there was never anything, just the cold, clinical silence and the relentless hum of the servers. His colleague, Alex, another night owl who occasionally worked the 12th floor, noticed Mark's increasing pallor and jumpiness. "Rough shift, Mark," Alex asked one morning in the deserted cafeteria, stirring his coffee. Mark shrugged, running a hand over his tired face. "Just can't shake off the feeling. The place feels different at night." Alex chuckled, a cynical sound. "It's an office building, Mark, just concrete and glass. Probably just the quiet getting to you, or the coffee. You're starting to look like you've seen a ghost." Mark looked at him, his eyes wide. "What if I have, Alex? I hear things. I see things. The elevator, it stops on its own. The 7th floor. Always the 7th floor. Always the 7th floor." Alex raised an eyebrow, a slight worried frown creasing his forehead. "Look, Mark, this place has always had rumors. Old building, built on a forgotten cemetery, all that nonsense. But it's just stories. You're probably just stressed. Sarah leaving, that takes a toll, man. Maybe talk to someone?" His voice was gentle, but it held a pity that stung Mark. Mark pulled away. "It's not that," he insisted, his voice tight. "It's real. I know it." But even as he said it, he heard the faint echo of Alex's words, stressed, tired, crazy. The seeds of self-doubt, once firmly rooted out by his logical mind, began to sprout. The feeling of being watched became constant, a cold, oppressive weight on his shoulders. He felt eyes on him from the darkened cubicles, from the reflections in the glass partitions. He'd catch fleeting shadows darting in his peripheral vision, impossibly quick, too dark for the ambient light. When he looked directly, they'd vanish. He started researching the building's history online, spending hours outside work, hunched over his laptop in his empty apartment. The Omnicorp Tower was built in the early 90s, replacing an old textile factory that had burned down under mysterious circumstances in the 1960s. Before that, the land had been a sprawling, pre-Civil War era orphanage. And before that, he found a faded local history blog mentioning an old, unmarked mass grave discovered during the factory's construction, quickly covered up to avoid delays. The blog hinted at a virulent flu epidemic in the late 1800s that had decimated the orphanage's children. The dead were buried quickly, cheaply, on the grounds. The land, it seemed, was indeed steeped in forgotten sorrow. The 7th floor. He remembered the historical layouts, the textile factory's main production floor, the orphanage's dormitories for older children. The whispers in the office now seemed specifically tied to the 7th floor. He'd be on the 14th, but the desperate pleas, the child's cries, would clearly emanate from below, vibrating through the floor. He often felt a strange, almost magnetic pull towards the 7th floor, a morbid curiosity overriding his fear. One night, unable to resist, he took the elevator down. He made sure no one was watching. The doors hissed open on the 7th. The air was colder here, much colder, and the floral metallic scent, that unique smell of lilies and damp earth mixed with something coppery, was overpowering. He shone his powerful flashlight down the dark corridor. Everything was shrouded in dust sheets, equipment covered like sleeping giants. He heard it then. A faint, repetitive scratching sound coming from behind a heavy, bolted metal door at the very end of the corridor, at the very end of the corridor. It was the entrance to a long, disused utility shaft, according to the building plans. He walked towards it, his heart hammering against his ribs, the silence of the floor amplifying every creak of his shoes. The scratching intensified, frantic, desperate, as if something was trapped behind the steel. He pressed his ear against the cold metal. And then he heard it, clear as day, a small child's voice, muffled but distinct. "Help me, please open the door." He stumbled back, gasping, cold sweat beading on his forehead. It wasn't just whispers anymore, it was a direct plea. He almost reached for the bolts, his mind screaming at him to help. But then, another sound. A low, guttural growl emanating from behind the child's voice, from deeper within the shaft. It was the sound of ancient hunger, of predatory patience. The child's voice instantly ceased, replaced by a faint, whimpering sob that quickly faded. He turned and ran, scrambling back into the elevator, hammering the button for the 14th floor. The door seemed to close in slow motion, the silence of the 7th floor pressing in on him. As they finally hissed shut, he swore he saw a brief, shimmering distortion in the air behind him, a vague, shadowy form, too large to be human, too dark for the shadows. After that night, Mark rarely left the 14th floor. He ate at his desk, avoided the cafeteria, and meticulously planned his trips to the restroom, always looking over his shoulder. Sleep became a luxury he could no longer afford. Every moment he closed his eyes, he saw the child's desperate face, heard the guttural growl, felt the cold, predatory gaze of the unseen. He knew he was unraveling. The entity, whatever it was, seemed to know. It started playing with him, taunting him. His computer screens would flicker, displaying corrupted data, sometimes flashing fragmented images, a child's hand reaching out, a glimpse of a shadowed face with impossibly wide eyes. He'd yank the power cables, cursing, but the images would linger in his mind. He started seeing them directly, not just shadows, but figures. Fleeting, translucent forms, moving silently in the peripheral vision of the distant hallways, sometimes pausing, their vague shapes facing him as if observing. He'd blink, and they'd be gone, replaced by empty office chairs and silent cubicles. He saw the porcelain doll again, sitting on a vacant desk, its unblinking eye fixed on him before it vanished. His manager, Mr. Thompson, a perpetually stressed man who only cared about quarterly reports, called him into his office. "Mark, your performance has been slipping. You look exhausted. Are you all right? Is everything okay since Sarah? Is everything okay since Sarah?" His voice was clipped, impatient. Mark tried to explain, stumbling over his words, describing the voices, the cold, the figures, the 7th floor. Mr. Thompson listened, his face slowly morphing from impatience to profound concern, then to a grim, almost pitying look. "Mark," he said, his voice softer, "I'm scheduling you for a mandatory leave. A full month. You need to rest. Get your head straight." He mentioned a company-sponsored therapist. Mark knew what it meant. He mentioned a company-sponsored therapist. Maston Point sighed. He was being sidelined, deemed a liability. He was truly alone in this. The whispers now echoed in his apartment, in his car. The cold spots followed him home. He felt the constant presence, the immense ancient hunger that seemed to have latched onto him. He remembered old man Finch from a documentary he once saw about strange occurrences in remote towns. It senses your resonance, your weariness, your loneliness, your loneliness, your loneliness, your loneliness. He was preying on his vulnerability, on the raw, open wound of his loss. He realized the horror wasn't just in the office. It was something that permeated the very ground, the history of the place, the orphanage, the epidemic, the mass grave, the factory fire. It wasn't just tragedy, it was a cycle, a feeding ground. The voices, the whispers, they weren't random. They were the echoes of the consumed, drawing others in, urging them closer. He was hearing the call, becoming part of the chorus. He needed to confirm it one last time. He knew the last full moon of autumn was approaching. The day after his forced leave was supposed to begin. He decided to go back to the 7th floor, to the utility shaft. He arrived at Omnicorp an hour before midnight, the building dark and silent. He bypassed security using his old night shift access codes, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. The lobby was vast, empty, the polished floors reflecting the faint moonlight. He took the elevator. He didn't press a button. The doors closed, and the car began its slow, deliberate descent. It stopped, naturally, at the 7th floor. The doors hissed open. The cold was immense, biting, carrying that cloying, floral metallic scent. The whispers were deafening, swirling around him, a maelstrom of frantic, pleading voices, punctuated by the low, guttural growl. He could feel the pervasive entity, its immense hunger, its ancient patience, all around him. He walked down the corridor towards the utility shaft. The dust sheets on the covered equipment seemed to writhe, as if something was stirring beneath them. He reached the heavy metal door. The scratching was frantic, desperate from inside. "Help, please, he's here, he's coming for us, help us!" The child's voice wailed, clearer than ever. David reached for the heavy bolt, his hand trembling. He had to help. He had to open it. But then he heard it. He opened it. Soft, mournful, achingly familiar. "Mark, don't leave me. I'm cold, so cold." He froze. He turned slowly, his blood running cold. Standing a few feet behind him, shimmering faintly in the oppressive darkness, was Sarah. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and vacant, her hair floating around her as if underwater. Her arms were outstretched, reaching for him. "Sarah?" he whispered, a sob tearing from his throat. Was it real? Was she here? Her mouth opened, and the image of her face distorted, stretched, her eyes elongating, becoming impossibly wide and black. The outstretched arms grew longer, thinner, ending in fingers that seemed to have too many joints. The sweet, cloying scent intensified, gagging him. And the voice, it was Sarah's, yes, but it was overlaid with a chorus of 1,000 other voices, all speaking in unison, all calling his name, promising him oblivion. "Come, join us, be whole," he recoiled, pure terror seizing him. This wasn't Sarah. It was the entity. It had found his greatest vulnerability, his deepest loss, and it was wearing it like a grotesque mask. It wasn't just consuming the lost, it was mimicking them, luring others into its grasp, feeding on their despair, on their yearning for connection. His own personal grief, his loneliness was a beacon, just as Old Man Finch had said. He was being harvested. The figure lunged impossibly fast, its amorphous body shimmering as it moved. The voices screamed in his head, a deafening chorus of agony and hunger. The cold enveloped him, pulling him into its suffocating embrace. He felt a searing pain, a profound violation, as if something was tearing at his very soul. He heard Daisy's whimper and Buster's frantic bark, and it was all Mark could do to keep from screaming. He woke up, slumped against the cold metal door of the utility shaft. The cold was still there, but less biting. The sweet metallic scent had faded. The whispers were gone. The figures, the shifting shadows, gone. The silence was absolute. He pushed himself up, his body aching, his mind a shattered mess. The door was still bolted. He hadn't opened it. He hadn't opened it. He hadn't succumbed. He hadn't succumbed. He had survived. He made it out of the building. He made it out of beholden Fang on Roning. He just found himself outside, shivering in the pre-dawn chill, the Omnicorp tower looming behind him, a dark, silent monolith against the faint glow of the approaching sunrise. It looked utterly normal, empty, just concrete and glass. He never went back. He never saw Alex or Mr. Thompson again. He left the city, left everything behind. He lives in a small, isolated cabin now, far from any major cities, surrounded by the quiet hum of nature. He can't work a corporate job anymore. The thought of confined spaces, of tall buildings, of endless corridors makes him physically ill. He tells himself it was a breakdown, a psychotic episode brought on by stress and grief. He repeats it like a mantra, a fragile shield against the terrifying truth. He tries to cling to logic, to reason, but the shield is riddled with holes. From that day, he still remains thinking about it. He feels the faint, inexplicable cold spots, even in the warmth of summer. He sometimes catches the cloying, sweet metallic scent on a breeze, or in the stillness of the night. He hears faint whispers, just on the edge of hearing, calling his name, promising him peace, echoing his deepest regrets. He scrutinizes the faces of strangers, the expressions of friends, looking for that subtle distortion, that unnatural stretch of a smile, that emptiness in the eyes. He knows it's still there, slumbering, waiting. And he knows, with a horrifying certainty, that he carried a piece of it with him, a resonance that was forever altered, forever open to the echoes of the lost. He escaped the building, but he did not escape the entity. He is safe, for now, but he is not whole. He is forever haunted by the chilling knowledge that beneath the gleaming surfaces of our modern world, ancient, hungry things lie dormant, waiting for the lonely, waiting for the lonely, waiting for the lost, waiting for the lost, waiting for the night to call them home. Thanks for watching. The veil between our world and theirs is thinner than you think. Each like, each share, each subscription strengthens the connection. Feed the channel before it feeds on you.